So today on Online for Authors, I'm chatting with S.M. Stevens, author of Beautiful and Terrible Things. Welcome, Sue.
Hi, nice to be here.
It is wonderful to have you. I loved the book, but before we really dive in, can you give listeners just a quick idea of what they're going to find when they open up the cover of Beautiful and Terrible Things?
Sure, I'd love to. Two quick answers, if I may.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as the publisher will tell you, because they like to focus on one character, it's the story of Charlie, who is a superstitious, damaged bookstore manager. And she socially isolates herself, but she is drawn out of that social isolation by a quirky activist named Xander, and she becomes part of his group of diverse friends, and then betrayal follows. But I will also add that at its heart, it really is a friendship story. It's about 6 very diverse friends, and I was really shooting for the camaraderie of like the TV show Friends, or people of my generation, the movie The Big Chill.
Right.
And that angle does seem to really be resonating with readers.
It does, and it did with me. I've loved the friendships. I found it fascinating, the diversity among those friendships. So let's talk about that just really quickly. What made you decide to focus on contemporary issues like diversity, like green initiatives, like mental health? What made you say, oh, this is where I'm dropping in, instead of historical fiction or fantasy or some other place?
Sure, right. Well, I always gravitate toward contemporary. I think I started there because when I started writing fiction, I was working full time, and I just didn't have the oodles of time required to research historical fiction. But I really do love that. It is my sweet spot. And so I honed in on all of these social justice issues, which some people would find strange. Most novels will pick one main theme and focus on that.
Right.
But I just felt like that's not our world today. And I ran it by some younger people when I was starting to write. And I said, is it too much to get into racism and immigration and mental health and a little bit of gender? And they said, no, that's our life today, especially if you're in a city. So
Right.
I went with it.
Right. And so you did place them in a city, which definitely gives it that flavor. I want to know how difficult it was to write such diverse characters, because, you are not many of the things on the list, right? Because you've got characters of different race, you've got characters of different sexual orientation, you've got characters with different socioeconomic statuses, you have characters who were born in diverse places, you've got and more, like it just keeps going. How hard was that to write a character without stereotyping them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was the number one thing on my mind when I was attacking this group of characters. And yes, I bit off a lot. But I mean, and I'm as bland as they come, as you said, in a nicer way. I am a white cis female, So it was important to me to get it right. And the way that I approached it was a lot of research. First on the computer with as you said, gender and sexual orientation, and to be what's it like to be Black in America, and what's it like to be a Filipino American, and on and on. And so I started there, and I read a lot of personal stories too. But then I found sensitivity readers, and that was hugely important. So I had several Black friends, and I had people with mental health issues, and I had people of various sexual orientations read this, parts or all of it, and make sure I was being authentic. And the crazy thing is I even found a Filipino American artist to read the parts about my Filipino American artist character.
Right. So I've never used a sensitivity reader because to date, I haven't written anything that I felt really needed one. Mm-hmm. When you find these readers and they come back, do they have the same? I'm just wondering, because like you and we would read something and we might say, well, that's not my lived experience. And so I'm just curious, how do you take information from maybe 5 readers who are all Black or who are all have mental health issues or whatever, and then fix what they say is wrong, especially if they don't necessarily agree?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think anytime we have beta readers, right,
Yeah.
whether they're sensitivity or just
Yeah.
beta readers, yeah, you get to take it all with a grain of salt. And if you have 5 of them and 3 of them say something, I think you really have to listen. If one person says it, you get to be a little more flexible. I didn't have the luxury of having, 5 for each category of
Right.
sensitivity reader, so I did have to make some judgment calls. But for the most part, they are the experts. So and it helped that they were very sophisticated or intelligent people. They weren't just react. They knew that what they were reading might not be their experience, but as long as it
Right.
sounded valid to them, that they knew someone who would have experienced that, that worked for me.
Right.
But some things were subtle, and sometimes I had to pull it out a little bit. Like there was one reader who only sort of implied something. But bottom line is, I pulled a little bit, and I found out that she didn't like the character Jess. How toward the end, and Jess is Colombian American, and she ends up with a black man. And mini spoiler there, but that's okay. And I realized that matters. If she represents other people who are going to feel that way, I need to fix that, because I did not want Jess to be that unlikable. So
Right.
it was really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. I would think that it's both helpful and then maybe a little confusing, especially, when I'm doing beta reading. I'm a writer, and I can say, I'll see some of the beta readers' ideas and I'll think, yeah, it's just not going to work. I mean, I know that's not going to work, because we're talking about writing and, character that I understand. But when we're talking about characters that are significantly different from me, now I have less place to stand. And so someone says something and I'd be going, I don't know. I don't know. Like, I would think that would be a very difficult thing to balance between what you want to have happen on a page and what other people are telling you can and can't happen.
Right. I mean, but at the end of the day, right, we're only writing a handful of characters. We're
Right.
not representing an entire race.
That's true.
Or
That's
an
true.
entire population. So we can only do what we can do.
Right. Right. No, I agree. I found it fascinating. I actually found it very brave that you would tackle so many things at one time and have so many diverse characters, and not all in one. It's not like they were all social justice warriors who were, looking at green initiative. You have them up just like across the board. And I just found that really fascinating. And like I said, brave that you would be willing to just throw it out there and say, okay, here they are. But I think what I liked about that is it allowed us to see situations from a multitude of perspectives.
Mhm.
And that these friends didn't always agree, just like friends in real life, right?
Mhm.
And that the friends who did agree on this issue might not agree on the next one.
Mhm.
So it wasn't like these 3 always ganged up against these 3. It was very fluid as to who felt what in any given situation.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right. And that was the goal. I was trying to be realistic, because I think
Right.
that I'm that way with my friends. There are some friends I agree with them on A, but not on B.
Exactly. Like, not to give a lot away, but Xander is the real social justice. I'm going to get out there and hold a sign and go to the protests and everything else. But when it came to things like mental health, he was kind of clueless.
Mhm.
He just kind of like, oh, I don't know. And I found that interesting, because that is the way it would work, is that you have someone who really understands one thing and doesn't understand another.
Right.
Right. I want to know, of those 6, who is your favorite, and then why?
Oh, it's like picking your favorite
I
child.
know. I
Right?
know.
I mean, I think the most likable character, the one with the least baggage, is Sunny.
Yeah.
Right. And Sunny is just passionate and loving, and now she doesn't have as much. Sunny is non-binary, so goes by they. They don't have as big an arc in the story as I would have liked. In my first draft, all 6 characters had their own arcs, and the book was twice as long.
Too much.
I knew no one was going to publish that, so I had
Right.
to certain storylines back, and theirs was one of them. But yeah, Sunny is definitely my favorite.
Yeah. They definitely give, when I was reading their parts, I felt calm.
Nice.
And there were several times where they would do something and Charlie might be in her mind talking about, like, oh, that just feels good, or that just, that's just wonderful. And I would think, oh, I want that.
Right.
I want a Sunny in my life. I need that right now. So you wrote them very well.
Thank you.
Them very well. Yeah. Was it difficult to write a non-binary character and keep the they, them?
It was, I mean, I've been exposed to it for a while through my child, and
Okay.
but yes, is the honest answer.
Yeah.
And what I would do is just not worry about it. I would try to write they, but if she came out, because Sonny definitely skews more that way, than versus he, I didn't worry about it. I would go back and fix it after.
Fix it
And
later. Yeah.
but I will confess, there was one that snuck through. And I've only ever heard of one reader that found it.
I did not notice it. I did not. But that's the thing that's interesting to me, is we can have readers, beta readers, sensitivity readers. We can have the people that come through and do, all of your proofreading, and there are still errors.
Mm-hmm.
And it happens every time.
That is the truth.
And it doesn't even matter. I've heard people say, well, this is a self-publishing issue, or this is a small press issue. And it's not true, because even in these beautifully, mass-produced books from big publishers, I find errors.
I totally agree. And I have a pretty good eye for typos and that sort of thing, because I was a business writer and editor for years. And so, yeah, same thing. I can read the biggest names from the biggest publishers, and I almost always find at least one thing that's wrong.
Yeah. And it just is the way it works.
Mm-hmm.
I know for me personally, I have trouble finding my own errors, because I know what it's supposed to say. And so that's what I read.
Right.
So it's definitely a good idea to get it out there to other people who can help you find it. But they then, if they get into your story and they start to read it as a story instead of read it as a proofreader, and I've done that before, where I've been reading something for someone and realized I have to go back and read the last 10 pages again, because I've been enjoying the story and I forgot my job.
Yes, been there.
Yeah. It's like, oh, my job is to pay attention, and I'm now reading. So I want to know a little bit about your writing process. Are you a pantser? Are you a plotter? Do you write daily? Do you have a time? Do you have a place?
Okay, sure. And I'm actually starting my next work in progress. So this is very, very timely, because every time I approach it, I have to think about what my process is, and it can vary. But yeah, no, I'm definitely more plotter than pantser. And I just can't sit down and write without knowing my topic. And that means knowing my characters and having a rough idea where the plot's going. So yeah, I definitely do a lot of research first, and then when I feel ready to sit down and actually start writing, that's my prize.
Yeah.
That's the fun part. And then of course things will change. Right. So, what you start out with is not what you end up with, and the characters really do lead you in different directions. But definitely more toward plotting.
Do you have a particular method you use? I'm fascinated. I am a pantser, and I have tried plotting to no success whatsoever. And I always like to hear other people, like, do you follow a particular thing that helps you with your plotting, or is yours more just an internal, I know what I'm going to do?
I haven't done it yet for this book, but I do refer to a couple of things and then do what I want.
Yeah.
Right. But I went to a writing seminar years ago down in New Orleans, and C.J. Lyons, who is a medical thriller writer, was our teacher for 3 days, and she was fantastic, and she really helped me understand the three arc story, or the three act character arc. And I do like that, and I think there's a lot to that. It basically helps you make sure that your character is believing something that's maybe not true about themselves or the world, and then they start to surmount that, but then they slip back into their old ways, because that's what we do, and then ultimately, success. And I think there's a lot to that. I think that's a formula that all readers like to see.
Yes.
Right. And then also the book by James Moss, Plotting the Novel, is also really helpful for making sure you've done everything you can with your plot, in terms of, is it as rich as it can be? Have you really, are you taking the easy way out, or should you be doing something harder for your characters? So I love both of those resources. But then sometimes you have to go your own way.
Right.
Right.
And I think that's probably true of most people, that they read a variety of different kinds of books and then come up with that process that fits them the most.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely. So then are you a daily writer, morning writer? How does that work for you?
Generally morning. Sometimes, sadly, my mornings will start at 3:30 because I wake up in the middle of the night with this scene going through my head, and so I finally give up and go down to the computer to capture it.
Right.
And then I usually just stay up and keep writing. So I tend to be morning. I mean, I can lose myself for 8 hours with no problem if I have no other distractions. So yeah, I tend to be a morning writer. I try to write, 5 days a week, but it's flexible. Yeah, the one trick I've got sort of up my sleeve, I've never really dealt with writer's block, knock on wood. And the trick that I use for that is that whenever I stop for the day, I know what I'm going to do next.
Okay. So you don't write until you're done. You write to a point and then say, okay, that's where I go tomorrow. Yeah.
Right. And it might mean roughing out the next chapter so that when I come sit down, I'm like, okay, there's my next chapter. I'm ready to go with it.
Right.
That's been really successful.
Absolutely. Do you have a favorite spot? Do you like to write there in the office that you're in now, or do you like to be out? Do you have to have silence?
I can write anywhere. And it's partly my business training. Because when I was working in this big corporate job, writing wasn't my only job, but I did write a lot of speeches and some articles and whatnot. And I learned to write in 5-minute increments because I was constantly being interrupted.
Right.
And that was like the best, to be able to concentrate, get distracted, come back, concentrate again.
So I can write anywhere and I can write with noise. And partially it's because I have 4 children. Now they're grown adults now, but when I started writing for small businesses where I was helping them write their content and things online, because in 2000, there were a lot of new businesses not new businesses, but businesses that were newly putting their things onto the internet, and they were not doing a good job of it. And I recognized, hey, this is a good place for me. And so I started helping small businesses, but I had 4 children running around and my office was in the living room. I mean, I didn't even have a space for me. And so given that, yeah, I can write anywhere. In fact, I almost prefer noise because when there's noise, then I tune it out. Like I just tune, and then I become very focused. And when it's quiet, I notice, the clock ticking, the house settling. I notice every noise. So
right, I get it. It's like the noise helps you get in the zone. And I had this experience as you, a few years before my kids left the house, where I had the 2 kids, I had 3 dogs. Yeah. So it's like, there was always something going on around me.
Yeah, absolutely. When people close this book, they've read it all. What do you hope they walk away with?
There are 2 levels to that. So on one level, I hope that they thought a little bit about the social issues facing the country. And I had 2 specific messages that I did want to convey there through the story. And the first is that there are many different paths that we can take toward being more involved in making the world a better place, right? And on one end, you've got Xander, who you mentioned is hardcore activist. But there's many, many ways for people that aren't comfortable with that. Whether it's a donation or signing a petition, or, in Charlie's, example, she provides resources for, immigrants, whatever. Right? So there's many ways to help a little bit if that's what you feel like doing. And the other social justice message from me was just whatever your views are on the many, many issues facing us today, whatever your view is, just it behooves us all to remember that there are always real people behind these statistics and these news stories. Exactly. And so I think a story can remind us of that better than watching a newscast or reading the latest data. So there's that. But the other thing that I want people to leave it with is the friendship story. I want them to say, I loved hanging out with those friends and I want to hang out with them again. That was great, because I love that feeling. And so I'm hoping my readers get that.
Yeah. Well, and all of those things definitely came through for me. I mean, I loved how you showed, and I won't give anything away, but in the end, there were so many different ways that people figured out how to deal with how they were going to stand up for the things that they believed in, and that they didn't all look the same, and that was perfectly okay. And so I loved that. And I think I really also liked that idea that we're all so different, and that just because we have a strength in one area doesn't mean that we have to have a strength in all areas, and that it's okay. And that with friendships, that's okay too. You don't have to have friends who are just like you. In fact, it's probably better if you don't. It's better if you have friends who have a lot of variances, so that you can kind of get a better understanding of the world, the way your book helped people, I think, experience things that they might not experience in their daily lives. So I love that.
Lovely way to put it. Thank you.
So you alluded to the fact that you're writing something else. Can you tell us a little about what's coming up next?
Sure. I feel very fortunate that I have 3 things in the works.
Whoa, 3 at a time. I am now completely impressed again. Okay.
Well, but you know how it goes. They're all at different stages. So yes. I couldn't write 3 things at once. I don't know. But the first is, at this point, it's called The Unraveling of Caro Dunn. And it's about a cranky grandmother, as I call her, who is a successful business person and has many family secrets that come unraveled. And that is with the publisher. I'm just waiting to hear when the release date will be. So sometime in the next year. We know what a long process that is.
Yes, absolutely.
And then the second one is I have co-written with some friends a true crime memoir, which is very different from me, but it was wonderful to write. And it's a really compelling story. And we're now querying that, trying to find an agent. And then the third one I've just started researching and writing my next work.
Can you give us a little clue as to what this next work is going to be about?
Sure. So it's tentatively called Discord, and it's going to, the message is going to be, why can't we all just get along? And
good question.
Yeah, right. So maybe it sort of builds on what you were saying with Beautiful and Terrible Things, where, diverse friends can still be friends. In this case, though, it's going to be about 2 men who are best friends since childhood. And they grow up, and then their paths diverge as adults because of their views on life and politics. I'm going to try not to get political, though. And then the question becomes, can they regain? Can they reclaim that friendship, or are their views on the issues keeping them too far apart?
Right. Very good. I love that. So, hey guys, if you want to keep this conversation going, head on over to Novels and Latte Book Club on Facebook. There you're going to have a chance to win a digital copy of Beautiful and Terrible Things. Just tell me something you liked or learned on this podcast, and you will be in the drawing. So, Sue, if someone wanted to get in touch with you, talk with you about your books, talk with you about your writing, how do they do that?
Sure. Well, let me first mention that actually this is the cover because there are several books with the same name.
There are. I noticed that.
And would you believe one came out a few months before mine? Because I had researched the name originally, and no one else was using it. And then someone did a few months before mine, but that one's a book of essays, so you have to look for the right one. But the best way to stay in touch is through my website is author.smstevens.com. So you can see the spelling SM Stevens with a V. And I actually do have a newsletter if people want to follow it. If you do, you get a free digital copy of this little novelette called The Wallace House of Pain. And this actually has won a couple of awards, and it features the same characters as Beautiful and Terrible Things.
Ooh.
So it's a great way to get to know them. If you're not sure if you're committed to the full novel, you can read this and see if you want to spend more time with them. So the website and newsletter are the best ways, and then you can get to all my social media from there if you're interested.
Fantastic. So guys, all of that will be in the show notes. And for those of you that are listening, when she held up the cover, it is kind of tan and it has faces. And so you'll see the 6 faces of the friends. And so that's the cover that you're looking for. It's Beautiful and Terrible Things by S.M. Stevens. And if you put that into Amazon, it pops up immediately as long as you put the S.M. Stevens there. So I want to thank you so much for being with me today, Sue. This has been wonderful.
Thank you, Terry. I had a lot of fun.
Thank you for listening to Online for Authors, where I, Terry M. Brown, author of character-driven fiction and host of the podcast, introduce readers to characters they'd love to invite to lunch. Tune in next Tuesday for another podcast episode.